Let's go ahead and go back to the January 24 tab and let's look at Table 1 and find some statistics about our budget. So these are our expenses in column B. And I want the average expense. So just like when we were down here, we wanted the sum. It was the sum function. If you had to guess, this would probably be the average. And you can usually guess. Google searches help, but you can usually say, what do I want? The average, hit equal A, and up will come stuff. Now we see there's a lot of other options. We just want the straight average. We'll explore another one of these in a bit. So I want the average, and then what's tempting is to say, I want the average of everything in B. But that is not correct because everything in B contains this. So I actually don't want the average of everything in B. I want the average of, click here from B2 to B31. So the average expense is almost $200. Average is one form of the center of the data. Another form is median. We'll pick up the exact differences in these measures of the center of a data set in another module. But for now, I'm just going to say, if you want the median, what would you guess it is? Median. So we want the median. And we want the median from B2 to B31. You could type 2 and 31 in manually if you wanted. So the median's a little less, which means we have some expenses that are large. Yes, we do, like this $1,200. Now we want the biggest. So if you hit equal biggest, there is no biggest because in math we usually call it the max. So we want the max of B2 to B31. And now that the max is 1,200, we see that. Now we want the smallest. Again, small is not small. This is a little bit complicated. It returns the kth smallest value in the data set, so you have to know how many values are in your data set. So it is there, but it's something else. We want the minimum, which is a little bit more straightforward. Now, I want the same cells as with the biggest, so I think I will Control-C, Control-P. But when I click on the smallest cell, I'm going to change max to min. It's okay, it can figure out the casing, so you don't have to worry about uppercase or lowercase. And the smallest expense is 0. Ah, interesting. That's because I went to row 32. Really, the data only goes to row 31. So if you're going to row 32, yes, the smallest is, oh, there is a 0 there. 0 for the emergency fund. That's okay. That's why there's a 0 there. I was confused for a minute. If I took this out, let me just get rid of the 0. Then the smallest is 20. So I'm going to undo that, put that back in because right now that's there. So I had forgotten that our emergency fund is already full, by the way, which is why we don't need to put money towards it. Okay, so now let's look at table 2. So in table 2, we want the average expense, except I don't want the average expense. That's what we did up there. I'm going to say I want the average savings. And I'm going to keep doing savings because we did the expenses up above. So I'm just going to change those. For you, they'll already be changed. Okay, so now I want the average savings. Ugh, gosh. This isn't what I want at all. I want this to be cash. Then I want this to be bills. Then I want this to be debt. And that's all. Okay. So now what I want, oh gosh. I'm going to take our zero-based budget back to being zero-based. I had changed the 100 and I had changed the 40. Okay, so now we have a zero-based budget. I want to now work on our tables. So we can use Excel and the formulas in Excel to do some computations. So for example, average. I could, you're going to type an equal sign, and then oftentimes guessing what the function is called is helpful. For example, if I type A, I see, or AV, I see average come up. And so to find the average expense, we are going to type average, and then it's tempting to say I want everything in column B. The problem is that includes this total money out, which I don't want. So I actually want everything that goes from B2 to B31. All right, so the average expense is 200. Now, what about the median expense? Average is some sense the middle of the data set. So what's a typical value of the expenses? Median is another such value. The details between the two would be discussed in another tech module. But if you wanted to guess median, it would be MED, and there is the median. So here we can have the median of our cells B2 to B31. And the median expense is 155. That it's lower, incidentally, than the average means that the data set has a high number pulling up the average, and we see that the 1200 is there. So if we wanted the biggest expense, you might type BIG for biggest, but it's not there, because in the math world, we tend to call it the max, not the biggest. So we would say, what's the maximal expense? And that's going to be our 1200. And I'm going to just copy and paste for the min, because for min, there is an MIN. And I think the easiest way to grab it will be to copy and paste the max and just change MAX to MIN. Excel can figure out the cases, that's fine, lowercase, uppercase. And it gives me 0. Oh yes, see, the emergency fund. If I took away this 0 here, then the minimal expense is 20, Control Z. But right now, I guess this person has a fully funded emergency fund, so right now they're not contributing anything to it. Okay, so that is how we find some mathematical, we apply mathematical formulas to data sets as a whole. In the next video, we'll work on this next table, which applies the formulas not to the entire data set, but just to a piece of it.